Welcome back to Smart Life on Money Biz Life Network. I'm Dr. Gina. Our children are encountering all sorts of shady characters every day in their school and in their extracurricular activities as well. It's tough to know what to tell your kids when you find out that someone or some group of kids is hating on them. What do we tell our kids when they encounter the haters, especially if we're not that good at dealing with them ourselves? Luckily, we have the man who wrote the book on parenting here with us today. Clinical psychologist and parenting expert, Dr. Dathan Paterno joins us to help. Dr. Paterno, welcome to Smart Life.
Hi, Gina. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. Thanks for being on Smart Life. I tell you what, I am going to tell you something. I'm going to make a little confession here. As you know, Dr. Paterno, I have a son with special needs. His name is Samuel, and he's 7. His 7-year-old brother was. Whenever anyone says anything unkind about his brother with a disability, he's very defensive. And even sometimes, if it wasn't even really an affront or making fun of his brother, he's just very defensive. And I like that about him. I'm glad he's going to be there to protect his brother for the long term. And he assures me of that all the time. And he's got a heart the size of Texas 99.9% of the time. But there is that 0.01% of the time, Dr. Paterno, where when he was 4 years old, he beat up an 11-year-old for saying something that he perceived was an attack on his brother, Samuel. And I'm not exactly sure how to handle it because I want him to be defensive of his brother, but I don't want it to turn out that he's the bully going around protecting his brother on the front side of an incident rather than just defending him when there really is reason for defense. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love what I'm hearing here because, number one, he's got the passion for protecting his brother, and he's passionate about loving his brother.
Right.
And you mix that in with a young child who's got the brain of a 7-year-old, and you'd expect them to not have the best impulse control, which is fine. But you're absolutely right that we just want to teach him that both in words and in showing him that we can be protective without having to do unto others as they have done to us, right? So you've got to teach them, and it sounds like you absolutely have, that what you're doing is right in terms of how you feel and how you perceive it, but we want our actions to match that. So we stand up to somebody, but we don't have to get aggressive. We don't have to do unto them as they have done to us. And so, I think modeling, I know you know this about me, is that I know if we want to teach our children something, we have to show them. And so the most important thing that we do when we encounter a bully or something like that is to validate their feelings, validate their perspective, and then show them that you can behave in a way that's moderate.
It's interesting because, all of this bullying and the left has snatched onto this whole concept of bullying and perhaps blown it out of proportion in some ways with things like, hate speech and taking little boys out of class for, trying to hold the hand of a little girl, this kind of stuff. That's ridiculous. And I think we can all pretty much agree on that. But how do you know if you're that parent and your kid comes home and they're whining about being bullied on a regular basis, but there aren't any bruises, there aren't any real solid facts? How do you know if your child's really being bullied or if they're just a whiner manipulating the system that has come now to want to really take those bullies down before anything really happens? Tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we are over-diagnosing or over-labeling bullying. Now, there is real bullying that happens, and when it does, you know about it. It's one of those things, like the Supreme Court said, you'll know it when you see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when a child comes home every day and they're crying and they don't want to be seen crying. They're hiding. They're not just bringing it to you, pouring out their heart and the woe is me and all of that. When you hear the woe is me, more often than not all the time, but more often than not, the child has been teased. The child is having a hard time taking into consideration that another child is doesn't like them or something like that, and they're over-exaggerating it because that's what children do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a normal response, and it's our duty as parents to say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never really injure me. They might hurt your feelings, but they're never going to really injure you, and let's talk about what that really means, and compare and contrast what hurts your feelings versus really damaging your ego or damaging your ability to be loved and to do your work and all of that. So when bullying doesn't get in the way of those things, I think it's just normal teasing that happens in an everyday environment that you deal with and I deal with as a grown-up, and we have to be able to tolerate some of this. I think we need some stronger emotional armor most of the time, and then we reserve both the attitude about bullying and the reaction to bullying when it's really happening.
Yeah, because I think the last thing we want to do is raise up a bunch of tender-footed, oversensitive whiners. I mean, that's in some ways that's worse than raising up bullies. But I do want to ask you, because bullying really is real, as you pointed out, and most everyone has been a victim of some sort of bullying in their lifetime. But this is what I want to ask you: the serious bullying. Cut down to that for a moment. The serious bullying, the reason that kids go home and commit suicide, that kind of bullying. Dr. Paterno, I have a theory. That that kind of bullying doesn't take place unless the child is seeing it in the home. Somewhere in their life, that real serious bullying is being modeled either by older siblings, by parents to one another, which often happens, especially in situations of separation or divorce. I just have a feeling that those children who are engaging in that really super destructive behavior are learning it somewhere. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And research bears that out, just like sexual and physical abuse that occurs from parents to children. Something like 90% of them had been abused themselves. Well, it's the same thing with bullying. You can guarantee that a child is coming from a home where violence has been brought upon them and they are being belittled on a regular basis. And so what can a child do but to displace that elsewhere? They either have to sit with the fact that they believe that they are worthless, which is basically what abuse says. You are a worthless human being or you're a subhuman being, and so I can abuse you. They either have to sit with that belief or they have to project that onto somebody else so that they don't have to sit with it themselves. And that's a very powerful defense mechanism. And it works. That's the unfortunate thing, is that it releases those negative feelings and that self-perception onto somebody else, the victim.
So this really, especially in terms of the verbal intimidation and bullying and the pulling people in who are the victim's friends and putting them on your side as a bully, this really has a lot to do with the insecurities of the bully. We're not just talking about words here saying that bullies are mostly insecure, unfulfilled, unhappy people, but we're really talking about insecure, unfulfilled, unhappy people here, aren't we, Dr. Paterno?
To the T, yes, absolutely. And one other thing that I think happens with bullies is that they learn how to exaggerate in language, okay? I'm going to give you an example. If we go out to dinner and you're all excited about having a ribeye, okay? You've got your heart set on a ribeye, and you order the ribeye and they say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have ribeye this evening. You have a couple different options. You can say, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. I hate this place. Or you could say, bummer, I guess I'll get something else. And in each occasion, you express some frustration, but one is very moderate, and you move on. The other one is extreme,
and that's where the bully tends to go. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And so we have to help our kids be able to gauge those kinds of things too. And role playing, I think, is a great example. And there are other examples in Dr. Paterno's book, Desperately Seeking Parents, and also our book, Ladies and Gentlemen. Thanks, Dr. Paterno. I'm excited about my next guest. He doesn't have time for haters. He just calls them scumbags and goes on about his day. Gunny from Full Metal Jacket joins us next on Smart Life. Stay with us.